Let's start our study of statistics looking at the different types of variables. And before we can start talking about classifying variables, we should define what a variable is. A variable is defined as any characteristic, number, or quantity that can be counted or measured. And as we classify these variables, these characteristics, these numbers, or these quantities, we're going to have two main categories. Categorical, also known as qualitative, and numerical, also known as quantitative. We will then further break the numerical variables down into discrete and continuous. Let's start with categorical variables, also known as qualitative variables. These variables are going to describe some kind of characteristic of the individual. Some examples of things that would be categorical or qualitative. We could have hair color, religion, or place of birth. These all describe some kind of characteristic of the individual, and we can put them into categories, hence the word categorical. Numerical variables or quantitative variables, on the other hand, describe some quantity that can be measured or counted. Some examples of things that are numerical or quantitative. We can talk about the number of people in a class. This is something that we would count. Height, something we would measure. Another example would be age. So categorical variables can be placed into some categories, while numerical variables are things that we either measure or count. And these numerical variables do have two subcategories that we need to consider as well. The first subcategory of numerical variables is discrete variables. And these are numerical variables that have a finite or a countably infinite number of possible outcomes. An easy way to distinguish discrete variables is that these are things that we can count. Anything that we count would be considered discrete. Some examples. We could think of the number of cars in a town. This is something that we would count. We would count the number of cars, so it would be discrete. We could also do the number of pets that you have. This is something that, once again, we would count, so it would be considered a discrete variable. There are a finite or possibly countably infinite number of possible outcomes. We can always count the number of things. The second type of numerical variable is continuous. And continuous variables are numerical variables that have an uncountably infinite number of possible outcomes. The idea here is we have some kind of interval, and the variable can range freely in between there. An easy way to think about it is it's something that you would measure rather than count. Discrete are things that we count, and continuous are things that we measure. Some examples of this, we could talk about your height. This would be something that is measured and is continuous. You don't just jump up a number of inches or centimeters. It is a continuous rise. Another example would be your distance from your house to your school. In this case, this would be continuous. It has an interval that it can range freely over. We don't have to have a set number of miles or set number of feet, set number of meters. It can range freely over some interval. To conclude, we have our general overarching idea of variables, which can be broken up into two categories: categorical, things that we can place into a category, or numerical, things that we count or measure. Numerical can then further be broken down into discrete, things that we count, and continuous, things that we measure.
If you would like to see Professor Pierce make more videos like this one, you can support her on Patreon in the link below. Any and all support means a lot to her. It allows her not only to make more videos, but it also allows her to campaign for free and accessible online education to conferences and other universities. Thank you for watching, and remember, math is for everyone.